Exodus. John's old caddy had a huge engine that would qualify as a human rights violation if built today. It roared down the road, chugging gas and farting a blue cloud of dinosaur souls. "They're sealing off the town!" John screamed over John Fogarty. "Munch told me they got the highway and Route 44 both blocked off." We weren't heading to the highway, however. We would never have made it even without the roadblock. John's caddy wasn't exactly hard to spot, and we were being pursued. Fortunately, we knew a shortcut. John tossed his phone into my lap and said, "Call Shiva. Tell her to meet us at the water tower." "Who?" "Shiva, my girlfriend." "That's actually her name." "I think so." "There are absolutely no bars in this phone." I pulled out mine and said, "Shit, mine too." "God damn, we get shitty coverage here." Burrito stand. The tires screeched us to a stop. We spilled out and I yelled, "Trunk! Trunk!" John stopped in his tracks and said, "Molly!" I spun and there she was. She was by the trash can, her paws pinning down a scrap of aluminum foil while she hurriedly ate the remaining half of a chorizo burrito. John fumbled with his keys and got the truck open just as we heard in the distance, "Don't fucking move!" Goddamned Lance Falconer sprinting down the street, gun in hand. Holy shit, that man could run. I abandoned my stuff and sprinted to the back door of the burrito stand. The good news was it would get us out of here. The bad news was that the destination was a crapshoot and only one would work. Come on, water tower, water tower, water tower. We opened the door and squeezed into the utility closet. A blink later, the door changed in front of us and we stepped out too. Panties! Shit! We're at the Walmart dressing room. No good. If the feds had blocked off the highway at city limits, we were still on the wrong side of it. John said, "Back in, back in." Back into the dressing room. A blink. The smell of burritos hit us. We stepped out of the door at the exact moment Falconer skidded to a stop in front of us. He leveled his huge automatic at my face and said, "Freeze!" We ducked back inside. I heard Falconer yanking the door back open a split second before we emerged at a destination that stank of liquor and disinfectant. "Shit," hissed John, surveying a display of Jägermeister. "We're at the liquor store. Specifically, the restroom at the rear of the store." "What now?" "Maybe if we wait longer, he'll wander away." "He's not gonna do that. He'll search the burrito stand for a hidden hatch or something. Then he'll search our car and interrogate the burrito guy to see if he's in on it." I glanced around. "What's going on?" The liquor store was packed. People were hauling armloads of bottles up to the counter, and somebody was arguing with the cashier. "People stocking up." "Screw it. He won't be expecting us to pop back out. We'll go out and right back in. Third time's a charm." We shoved back into the liquor store restroom just as a guy nearby piled Jaeger and a half a dozen Red Bulls into a shopping basket. A blink. Burrito smell. I peeked out of the utility closet. A hand grabbed my collar and threw me to the ground, knocking the air from my lungs. A knee was on my back. Falconer screamed, "How are you doing that?" "We told you, just fucking let us go." "Shitbird," Falconer growled. "You need to understand that it's going to be martial law and rioting within the hour. That means if I put a bullet in both of your heads and leave you here, nobody will fucking care." I said, listen to me. Everything that has happened because they wanted it to." "Who's they?" "I don't know. Find out. You're goddamned Lance Falconer." John said, "Don't you get it? You're wasting your time. We're just a couple of inconsequential dipshits in this whole thing. The people behind this will take care of all three of us. We're all pawns. Well, you're a pawn. We're a couple of gummy bears your retarded little brother stuck on the chessboard." I felt the knee lift from my back. I looked up at Falconer towering over me. I met his eyes and found it easier to look into the barrel of his gun. He said, "See, I would let you go so you can try to jump the quarantine, but I would like to not be responsible for destroying the world today. I'd sooner let everybody in this town pass those barricades before you two fucks. I don't know if you noticed, but disaster follows you everywhere you goddamn go. Now, we're going to— Ah!" An orange blur attached itself to Falconer's crotch. It was Molly, her teeth buried right in the detective's junk. John grabbed my jacket and we stumbled into the closet. I pulled the door shut. Cornfield. "Yes!" screamed John. We stepped out of a blue porta-potty, the middle one in a row of 3 at the edge of a construction site. To our right was the legs of a half-finished water tower. In our various experiments with the doors over the months, we'd only found one, this one, that took you outside city limits, but not by much. No more than a quarter mile to the south of us we could see little dots of military vehicles, parked along a road bisecting the field. A little bit of the cordon encircling the city. John pulled out his phone and said, "No reception. Man, you think they're jamming the signal?" "Don't know. If so, we just gotta get far enough away. They're not blocking it for all of America, right?" "Well, highway's about a quarter mile that way." We went stomping across the expanse of broken corn stalks and mud of the harvested cornfield, tracing a similar path from that summer night when we saw the black convoy and found the box. 15 minutes later, we got a good look at the traffic jam on the highway, a line of cars that extended across the horizon as far as we could see in both directions. In the distance to our left was the roadblock, a cluster of flashing police lights, Humvees, and the muted echoes of somebody shouting into a megaphone. They were trying to get cars to cross the median and go back the way they came, but due to people refusing to comply, or confusion, or just the general dipshit dysfunction of crowds, the whole process had resulted in gridlock. We both flinched as the helicopter swept overhead. Day and a half ago, I was at work playing browser games on the PC and trying to think of what to get Amy for her birthday. Suddenly, it's the freaking apocalypse. John glanced at his phone, then stuffed it back in his pocket. 10 minutes later, we made it out of the cornfield and onto the grass along the shoulder of the road. We took a right, putting undisclosed to our backs. To our left was a wall of cars and semis, forming an automotive Great Wall of China that snaked over the next hill. When we crested that hill, we saw that the shopping center just outside of town, a U-shaped strip of stores encircling 3 sides of a huge parking lot, had become a gathering place for refugees. The parking lot was packed with vehicles, and more were parked in the grass along the entrance leading in. As we got closer, we saw people standing around, on their phones, trying to get in touch with loved ones behind the barricades. That prompted John to pull out his phone. "I've got bars!" Well, a bar. He dialed and said, "Hey, Shiva, it's me?" "Huh? No. Look, Sheila, Dave and I need a ride. We're right outside that strip mall with the Best Buy. They got the roads all blocked." "What?" "Yeah, I don't know. Did you say zombies?" "No, your friends are morons." What? No. Why would we have anything to do with it?" "Uh-huh. That's fine. Can you still pick us up? Hello? Shiva?" He put the phone away and said, "Call got dropped. Also, I think she broke up with me." I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but, did zombies come up in that conversation? "Yeah, apparently the internet is full of zombie rumors. People are stupid. I guess that's not any stupider than the truth." We made it to the shopping center parking lot. On one end was the Best Buy, on the other was a now-closed movie theater. Between the two was a row of storefronts, half of them unoccupied. John said, "I didn't know they had a Cinnabon out here." "We gotta get a ride, John. My feet are killing me." We walked past a parked Greyhound bus, and John said, "You think they let us on there?" The bus was empty. I said, "I don't know. Where's it going?" "Who cares?" "Good point. Find the driver and see if you can buy a ticket, or bribe him. I have $4. "I have $0. You might have to blow him." I peered through the smoked front windows of the Best Buy and saw the store was absolutely packed with people, staring up at a massive bank of televisions along the back wall. We went in and shouldered our way through the crowd. They were watching live news coverages of the chaos and undisclosed on 3 dozen flat-screen TVs of various sizes. The Action 5 news team was finding as many ways as they could to say the same thing over and over, that there was some kind of unspecified crisis in the town, and they didn't know the nature of it, but that it was huge and terrible, and that we should all remain calm but glued to our televisions. Then, they threw it out to star reporter Kathy Bortz, who was standing about 1 block from my house. "Thank you, Michael. Look behind me. Fire trucks, police cars, military Humvees, a large RV that appears to be a mobile command center from the Centers for Disease Control, numerous civilian vehicles, behind them a raging house fire. There is mass confusion here, folks. We heard gunshots when we first arrived. We have been told there are at least 3 bodies, but that's all we know. Personnel are..." "What was that? Did you catch that, Steve?" "Back on me. Ready?" "Personnel are swarming the scene. They're trying to push back onlookers. As you can see, quite a crowd has gathered around. Information has been hard to come by, but what we know is that this is the same address where less than an hour ago, neighbors called in reports of a shouting, bloody, naked man carrying what appeared to be..." "What's that, Steve? What's that, Steve?" "No, there's not something on my..." "Ah!" Kathy swatted at her hair, like a woman who has realized a bee is nested there. Only 2 people in the Best Buy saw that it was not a bee. She screamed. There was another scream. A man this time. Her camera guy, apparently, because the screen jerked and suddenly we were looking at the reporter's feet. She wore tennis shoes. I always remember that part. The knees of her pantsuit came into frame next. She was shrieking, convulsing. She fell flat into the grass. While the Action 5 news audience watched, the face of Kathy Bortz fell into frame. A 3-inch long strip of flesh was missing from her forehead, pink skull showing in the gash. Gasps from the crowd around us. On the screen, Bortz shrieked and shrieked. The strip of eaten flesh on her face grew, edging down across her eyebrow. The invisible to everyone else carnivore quickly chewed across her eyelid, then dug into her eyeball, spilling pale fluid down across the bridge of her nose. The shot cut back to the male and female anchors. Perfect-haired anchor Michael McCreary blinked, looked off camera, and said, "What the fuck?" His female co-anchor turned to lean behind the desk and vomited. The air in the store was charged with panic, that bottled-up, impotent panic of a crowd that doesn't know how to act on it. Should they riot? Loot the place? Burn it down? Should they stampede out of there? To where? Cinnabon? Instead, everybody just kind of stood shoulder to shoulder, mumbling to each other. A black woman next to me was crying, covering her mouth with one hand. My cell phone screamed and half a dozen people around me almost shit their pants. On the screen it said Amy. Amy, can you hear me? Yes. Did you hear the news? Yes. David, listen to me. We're okay. John and I both, we got out of town. Now, we may have to come up there and stay with you for a bit. We can't go back to town because... David, stop talking. Did you not get any of my voicemails? I got on a bus to Undisclosed this morning. Shit. Turn around, Amy. It's chaos in there. Get off at the next stop. And... The background noise had cut off from her end, and I knew the call had gotten dropped. No bars on the phone. Shit. John, she's on her way down here. No, that's good news, man. She'll be coming in on the highway, right? We figure out how far the bus got, and we'll meet her there. Hell, if we head north, we'll run into her at some point. My phone screamed again. Text message this time from Amy. The message simply, what is happening? There was a photo attached. I opened it. All of the warmth of my body drained out through my feet. All my life and strength forming a puddle on the tile floor. The photo was of my burning house, taken from not 20 feet away. I sat down, an act that was not entirely voluntary. I was in a forest of legs. My head was swimming. John was talking to me. Dave! Dave, what's happening? She's at my... I swallowed. She's at my fucking house, John. Amy. She took the bus this morning and she went to my house. To find me. I'm sure she's fine. She's smarter than both of us put together. I have to go back for her. You're damned right. He pulled me to my feet. I shoved my way through the crowd, knocking rudely through shoulders and elbows. In the parking lot, John said, all we gotta do is get back to the water tower, take the door, get back to the burrito stand. With any luck, the caddy will still be there. We can't walk. We have to, borrow a vehicle. Something that can drive right the hell across that cornfield. Look, he pointed, left of the Greyhound. There was a very muddy pickup, on jacked-up suspension, and the bed was an equally muddy dirt bike. I was praying that the keys were in the truck. They weren't, and the truck was locked. Looking around nervously, we rolled the bike out of the truck bed. I had only driven a motorcycle twice in my life, and hadn't crashed either time. John had actually owned one a few years ago, but had crashed it twice. We didn't discuss it. I jumped on, and John climbed on behind me. I kicked it to life, and we were off. Across the parking lot, onto the grass, into the stubble and mud of the cornfield. We bounced along the ruts, and John had his arms around my ribcage so tight that I thought he was breaking bones. I told him to loosen up because I couldn't breathe. I aimed the bike right at the vertical columns of the tower, brown at the seams where they had been welding the plates together. I saw the blue porta-potty at the base, as it grew out of a speck in the distance. November wind froze my ears and cheeks. I felt like I was watching myself do all of it from afar. They couldn't have Amy. They could have me. They could have John. They could have Undisclosed in the Midwest in America. I'll cede all of that to them, whoever they are. But they don't get Amy. She's off the table. Amy had already lost her family in that car accident years ago. The same one that took her hand and left her tethered to a bottle of pain pills she could never allow out of her sight. She lost her brother. She lost her home. The world owed her more than it would ever be able to repay, but by God, it was going to have to try. The reporter's face kept flashing through my mind. A flesh-eating spider, chewing through her eye. Stop it. And Amy was closer than that. Closer to the infected house than the reporter. How in the hell had she gotten so close? Why didn't they stop her? Maybe the National Guard had gotten her by now, or the CDC. Maybe they just hold on to her until they got all this under control. They will never get this under control. I was numb all over. A combination of the cold and the vibration and the panic and exhaustion. I couldn't feel the bike jolting over the ruts in the field. I couldn't feel John's arms around me. I couldn't feel the half-dozen wounds that had been complaining all over my body. I pulled up to the porta-potty, found the kickstand, and said, if it looks like the feds have it under control, we find somebody in charge, and... John was not there. I jumped off the bike and looked back. There was a tiny figure way off in the distance, frantically waving his arms and running. He had fallen off somewhere around the first third of the trip. No time to wait for him. I pulled out my phone and wrote out a message to him in an unsent text, telling him to give us 30 minutes to get back before getting us as far away as he could. Somebody had to stay on the other side of those barricades. I left the message on the screen and laid the phone on the seat of the dirt bike. Couldn't use it in town anyway. I went to the door of the middle porta-potty and whispered, "Burrito stand." To be clear, the doors absolutely did not work that way. It was just wishful thinking, or a prayer. I opened it, stepped inside. The plastic porta-potty door slammed shut behind me. I knew I wasn't at the burrito stand. There were no burrito smells. There was noise. Panic from outside. I opened the door and had a split second to register I was in the restroom at BB's. Shouted commands, panic screams, gunshots. I wanted to turn back to the door, to retreat to the field. Instead, I found a gun barrel pointed at my face. I threw up my hands. "No, don't!"